I had been politically opposed to the war prior to deployment. To me, the whole idea that we were going to look for weapons of mass destruction and that there was any link between Saddam Hussein and Al-Qaeda and the 9/11 attacks was a lie. But I had been in the military long enough to not want to put in jeopardy my career, which up until that point had been impeccable, really. I had been a fast tracker. I went to Iraq as an infantry squad leader with my own squad. And I guess I was not committed to peace enough to want to put that in jeopardy. I wanted to go to war, hope that it would be over soon, come home, put the war behind me, and move on with my life. It seemed the simple enough thing to do until we arrived in Iraq. And our first mission was at this place called Al-Assad, which is part of the Baghdad International Airport complex. And it was really a place that was used to, by the Iraqi Air Force to keep their planes. They had fighter jet bunkers. And one of these bunkers had been turned into a temporary detention facility where we were holding prisoners of war. And our mission there was to torture these people, to use psychological fear tactics to keep them sleep-deprived for 2 to 3 days at a time in order to soften them up for interrogation. And in the process of doing this, we did things as using loud explosion-like noises to scare them into doing whatever we wanted them to do, using pistols to perform mock executions. And the criteria for labeling these people prisoners of war or combatants was very loose and arbitrary. People who were in possession of a weapon were considered combatants. People who were in possession of explosive wooden boxes, even though they were empty, this was enough to consider them combatants and to subject them to this kind of treatment. My political opposition to the war began to transform with the first mission when things like torture and the killing of civilians were no longer abstract concepts, but things that we were actually doing ourselves. But at the same time, as this conversion begins, I realized that it becomes more difficult to listen to my conscience when we're being constantly attacked and when survival becomes the #1 priority. In a place where you're a moving target, where going to the bathroom could mean that you're going to be killed by a mortar attack, or that going to any mission could mean that you're going to be ambushed and that you're going to be killed or have to kill someone. So the analysis of the war on conscience grounds gives way to trying to understand the environment in order to make it out of that place alive and in one piece. After the Al-Assad mission, we went to other missions in Iraq where we engaged the resistance in open combat. And by and large, the people who paid the price were unarmed civilians. 9 out of 10 of the people that we killed were unarmed and were in what I used to call the wrong place and the wrong time, although now I realize that we were the ones in the wrong place and at the wrong time. Coming home was what did it for me. I didn't really have a crystal clear moment to become a conscientious objector. What did it for me was being able to get out of that environment, to come home, and once again have the peace of mind and the safety to be able to go back to these questions, not only the political questions about weapons of mass destruction and links to Al-Qaeda and things like that, but now the moral questions that came from my personal experience on the ground in Iraq. And the killings and the torture and the destruction of the infrastructures and the structures that support life. And I found that I could no longer use the old excuses that I had used to go to a war that I had opposed from the beginning, that I had been in the military too long, that I had an impeccable career, the fear of being judged by my peers, the fear of going to jail. I realized that the damage that we were inflicting to the Iraqi people and to ourselves and our families was way too much for me to continue relying on it as a justification to participate in war. And I chose not to go back to the war. I went into hiding. I wrote a conscience objector claim, an application, which is still pending, actually, over 7 years. And I surrendered 5 months after my return from Iraq, and I spoke out. I gave a press conference, and I said that this war was oil-driven, and that it was illegitimate and criminal, and that I did not sign to do the things that we were doing in Iraq, and that I was therefore not going to go back. Following this press conference, I surrendered myself to the nearest military base, and 2 months later I was court-martialed. I was found guilty of desertion, and I was incarcerated for almost 9 months at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, corrections facility. And I got out in February of 2005.